The coffee was cold by the time Sarah noticed her hands shaking. Not from the November chill seeping through the cafe windows, but from the numbers glowing on her phone screen, her bank account sitting at $47.23 until Friday. 3 more days. 3 more days of stretching pasta into different shapes, of telling her 7-year-old daughter Emma that yes, they could share one hot chocolate as a special treat. 3 more days of being brave. Sarah Martinez had mastered the art of invisible struggling. At 32, she wore her best smile like armor, the kind cashiers and teachers and other parents never questioned. Nobody needed to know that her car had been repossessed last month, or that she'd been walking 2 miles to her waitressing job because the bus fare added up. Nobody needed to know that sometimes, late at night after Emma fell asleep, she allowed herself exactly 5 minutes to cry before washing her face and meal planning the next day with whatever was left in the pantry. But this morning was different. This morning, Sarah had promised herself something small, a real cup of coffee from the cafe downtown, not the instant kind she made in her efficiency apartment. One small luxury to remind herself she was still human, still deserving of something warm and good. The man in front of her in line looked out of place. While everyone else wore the uniform of the working morning, rumpled suits, yoga pants, medical scrubs, he stood in worn jeans and a faded jacket, shoulders hunched like he was trying to disappear. His hair was overgrown, graying at the temples, and when he reached the counter, Sarah heard him ask the price of a small black coffee. $3.50, the barista said, already moving to the espresso machine. The man's hands fumbled through his pockets, producing a crumpled bill and a handful of change. He counted it twice, his fingers trembling slightly. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, his voice rough. "I thought I had more." "Never mind." He turned to leave, and something in Sarah broke open. Maybe it was the way his shoulders curved inward, the same way hers did when she checked her bank account. Maybe it was the quiet resignation in his voice, so familiar it hurt. Or maybe it was simpler than that. Maybe kindness doesn't need a reason. "Wait," Sarah heard herself say. She stepped forward, her hand already reaching for her wallet. "I'll get his coffee. And whatever he'd like to eat." The man turned, his eyes widening. "No, I can't. Please," Sarah said, and she meant it. "Let me do this." The barista looked between them, and Sarah nodded firmly. "1 black coffee and," she glanced at the pastry case, seeing a cheese Danish that Emma would have loved, and that Danish, please. "Ma'am, you don't have to," the man started. Sarah smiled, the real one she saved for Emma, not the armor kind. "I know I don't have to. I want to." She paid with her card, watching the numbers in her head adjust downward. $41 until Friday. She'd make it work. She always did. The man accepted the coffee and Danish with both hands, like they were something precious. "Thank you," he whispered, and his eyes were bright with something that might have been tears. "You have no idea what this means." Sarah wanted to tell him that she did know, that she understood exactly what it meant when a stranger saw you and chose kindness. Instead, she squeezed his shoulder gently and said, "Pay it forward someday." He nodded, studied her face for a long moment as if memorizing it, and then walked out into the gray morning. Sarah ordered her own coffee, just a small, nothing fancy, and headed to work, already recalculating her budget for the week. That was Tuesday. Wednesday came and went in a blur of double shifts and Emma's parent-teacher conference, where her daughter's teacher praised her reading level and Sarah blinked back proud tears. Thursday, Sarah's feet ached, and she fell asleep next to Emma while reading bedtime stories. Friday morning arrived with unexpected sunshine. Sarah was scrambling eggs, the last 2 in the carton, when Emma ran to the window. "Mama, there's a helicopter." Sarah laughed, stirring the eggs. "Probably just passing over, baby." "No, Mama, it's landing. In the parking lot. Come look." Sarah turned off the stove and joined Emma at the window. Sure enough, a sleek helicopter was descending into the apartment complex's parking lot, its rotors whipping fallen leaves into a frenzy. Neighbors emerged from their units, phones out, and Sarah's heart hammered with confusion and something like fear. 2 people emerged from the helicopter, a woman in a business suit and a man in a worn jacket that Sarah recognized instantly. The coffee shop man. Her coffee shop man. "Mama, they're coming to our door," Emma whispered. 3 knocks, firm but gentle. Sarah opened the door with Emma pressed against her side, her mind racing through possibilities, none of them making sense. The man from the coffee shop smiled, and he looked different in the morning light, steadier, more solid. Sarah Martinez. Yes. Her voice came out small. My name is Robert Chen. Tuesday morning, you bought me coffee and a Danish when I was at my lowest point. He paused, and Sarah saw emotion flicker across his face. I need to tell you something. I'm a software entrepreneur. 3 years ago, my company went bankrupt. I lost everything, my business, my home, my marriage. Tuesday morning, I'd spent my last night in my car. I'd driven to that neighborhood to say goodbye to the cafe where I used to meet my team, back when things were good. Sarah's hand found Emma's, squeezing tight. Robert continued, his voice thick. I'd made a decision that morning. After that coffee, I was going to drive to the bridge outside town. I was going to end it. He stopped, visibly composing himself. But then you stepped forward. A stranger who looked as tired as I felt, who probably needed that $6 more than I did, and you chose kindness anyway. You saw me. Tears streamed down Sarah's cheeks. Emma pressed closer. You told me to pay it forward, Robert said. So I drove to my sister's house instead of the bridge. I asked for help. She connected me with old colleagues, and we've spent the last 3 days building something new. But more than that, you reminded me that kindness still exists, that people still see each other. And I realized I wanted to see you too. Really see you. The woman in the suit stepped forward, introducing herself as Robert's sister and attorney. We've done some research, Sarah. We know you're working 2 jobs, that you lost your car, that you're fighting to give your daughter a good life while barely staying afloat. Robert wants to help, if you'll let him. We've established a trust fund for Emma's education, Robert said. Full ride, any school she chooses. We've also paid off your outstanding debts, medical, credit cards, all of it. And there's a check for $50,000, seed money to help you build whatever life you've been dreaming of. Sarah couldn't breathe. Emma was asking questions, and neighbors were gathering, and none of it felt real. Why? Sarah finally whispered. Because $6 in a moment of compassion saved my life, Robert said simply. And because people like you, people who give when they have nothing left to give, deserve to know that kindness comes back around. Maybe not always like this, but it matters. You matter. Sarah did cry then, great heaving sobs of relief and disbelief and exhaustion. Finally releasing. Emma hugged her tight, and Robert waited patiently, understanding written across his face. When Sarah could speak again, she said, I just bought you coffee. No, Robert smiled. You bought me a future. Let me help you build yours. That afternoon, after the helicopter had lifted away and Sarah had signed paperwork that felt like fiction, she sat with Emma in their small apartment. The check sat on the table between them, real and impossible. Mama, Emma said quietly. You always said kindness is free. Sarah pulled her daughter close, pressing a kiss to her hair. It is, baby. But sometimes, when you give it freely, it comes back as something precious. Not because you expected it to, but because that's how light works, it finds more light. Outside, the November sun broke through the clouds, and for the first time in years, Sarah let herself believe in small miracles and the extraordinary power of simply seeing another person's humanity. She'd bought a stranger coffee. He'd given her back hope. And somewhere in that exchange, in that brief moment of connection, both of their lives had been forever changed.